Hey,
GM.
we're live.
Hi,
GM,
GMC.
everyone. Yeah, and good evening to everyone in the West. So, I'm Sri Misra, founder of aarnâ Protocol, and we've got Will from Pendle with us here now. And Will and I will be discussing more about the phenomenal rise of Pendle and demystifying what is an amazingly complex DeFi protocol, and also dive into ATV USDC, which is Arna's yield aggregation, uh, USDC yield aggregation vault, which has gone live on Pendle just last week. So, looking forward to this chat, Will.
Likewise, looking forward to it.
So I know we had just exchanged some messages over the weekend, and you were down under in Sydney.
Yes, I was just touching some grass in Sydney after it's been a long year, even though it's only halfway through. But yeah, I thought it was good time to take some break in Sydney, touching some grass.
Yes, Sydney is a phenomenal city. I remember being there, almost I don't know, almost 10 years back or so. Just love the little bays all around the city. I don't know if you managed to do them.
Yeah, and the pace of life is quite different from Singapore, right? In Singapore, it seems like people are always trying to rush to some place, but in Sydney, everyone's like relaxed and they're just going about their own day. You don't see people rushing, just enjoying their day. So it's quite different vibe, more laid back than Singapore for sure.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. How the yield markets there?
Did you say the yield markets?
Yeah, in Sydney.
What kind of yield markets are you talking about?
So I said, I thought you would, even if you're on your holiday down under, you would be doing some digging around to find out what sort of yield markets are existing out there.
Yeah, I managed to meet a couple of guys actually, and they all happen to be Pendle users as well. So yeah, pretty interesting to see that we have users down under.
Right. So in general, do you guys have a view around, where the majority of Pendle users are from, or is there sort of a regional bias of sorts?
Well, I would say our user base is quite international at this point. We've got users from the US, we've got users from Europe, also a lot of our users based in Greater China. And so I think our user base at this point is quite spread out, and there has been a lot of communities that have been built around each of these regional countries. Whether it's Chinese speaking or whether it's Japanese speaking communities, or even Korean communities right now. It's been it's been an interesting ride, and I think we've seen users from all over the world learn about Pendle and how to use Pendle.
Right. That's great. I mean, it's been phenomenal. I think when I started talking with you, and we got in touch a bit over 3 months back, discussing ATV USDC and how we could structure it for Pendle. We had ATV 111, which was an ERC20 yield aggregator, but we
Yep.
wanted to build the ERC 4626 wrapper with multiple layers of yield, which could go live on Pendle. And at that time, Pendle was, I think, shy of 5 billion. And within 3 months, it's doubled to 10 billion. And we're not talking of a small base, 50 million going to 100 million. We're talking about 5 billion going to 10 billion. What's really driving this phenomenal, explosive growth for Pendle?
I would say there are a few key factors here. The one that is noteworthy in general is obviously the trifecta, between Pendle, Aave, and Athena. And what's really happening behind the scenes here is that with Athena, if you're familiar, they have a yield bearing stablecoin called âtvUSDC, as well as the non yield bearing version USDE. And what they are is a delta neutral stablecoin that gets yield from basis strategies. meaning they go long on spot assets and then short on the same asset, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin, to generate yields based on funding rates. So that's something that Athena has been doing very well. And the way that we work together with Athena is that this yield bearing stable coins can then be brought to Pendle, and we tokenize it into PT and YT. PT standing for principal token and YT standing for yield token. And a lot of people have strong interest in getting the PT versions of SUSD and USDE from Athena. In fact, that contributes to probably around 40 to 50% of our TVL. And currently, there's over like 3 billion worth of collateral just in the form of PT assets from Athena sitting on Aave. So I think that's the holy grail right there, right? Like you've got a really strong stablecoin project like Athena that has paved the way for many other projects like aarnâ and the other projects to come. And those guys have worked with Pendle, and the way that this PT fixed rate collateral has been adopted on Aave has seen a lot of massive interest. So whenever the caps raise on Aave, because Aave right now there is a deposit cap for the PT assets from Athena that is coming from Pendle, and every time
Mhm.
this cap's raised by 2 to 400 million, it goes away in a matter of minutes or even seconds sometimes. So it's something that's really phenomenal. We've seen a lot of interest, and why a lot of people are depositing the PT assets into Aave is because they're trying to do looping strategies, and I think we can discuss in more detail later what looping means. I think
Yeah.
aarnâ also has something to do with looping. But yeah, at a high level, they are borrowing at a lower rate, borrowing other stable coins at a lower rate, and then converting that to more PT assets, whether it's SUSD or USD from Athena, and then depositing it back into Aave to earn higher yields.
Right. So yes, obviously, sort of compounding yields, getting additional layers of yield is the core, and then stripping the yield from the principal and using the principal to take leverage on platforms like Aave, for example. And I'm guessing for in other instances it's also on Morpho, Euler, and then leverage looping it back in. So that's the whole sort of flywheel which has been working amazingly well. And I hear you say that, especially with Athena coming into the picture, that's kind of driven. The 3 billion out of the 10 billion is 30% is really USD assets, PT USD, in fact, sitting on
That's
Aave.
right.
So that's okay. That's phenomenal, and that's the sort of the flywheel. Now, can we just understand what Pendle is at a high level, if you could just strip it for everyone,
Yeah. So I think
just
the,
like
the
you guys
easiest
strip yield from the principal.
I'll try to strip the complexities away
Mm.
from what Pendle is. And honestly, at the core of it, it's a very simple product. Today, virtually every single DeFi yield bearing asset can be brought to Pendle, and we split it into PT and YT. So PT stands for principal tokens. It represents the fixed rate component or the principal component of the yield bearing asset, and YT stands for yield token. So yield tokens represents gives the holder all the future yield receivables that are coming from that yield bearing asset. So together they make up the underlying asset, right? So with PT or principal tokens, it's a very popular option for DeFi investors that are looking to earn fixed rates instead of gambling on the variability of whether it's underlying yields or whether it's points. Like in the case of Athena, they're still running some kind of points. I know aarnâ is also doing some kind of points, and I think the power with PT assets is that it's turning all the future points and expectations of airdrop into a quantifiable fixed rate in the form of PT tokens that a lot of these larger funds that are using Pendle don't have to speculate over it. They can simply lock in a fixed rate and use that as collateral on lending markets. On the other hand, we've got YT or yield tokens, which again I was saying earlier gives the holder all future yield receivables, and that also includes points. So with YT, it's more of a speculative tool, I would say. If For example, a trader expects that the yield of the underlying asset, whether it's aarnâ, âtvUSDC, or whether it's athena, to go up in the near future, then they would be better off buying YT because they get a leverage exposure to all the future yield receivables as well as the points.
Right. Okay. So uh, let's take the entire flow. So a
Yeah.
USDC holder deposits USDC into any yield-bearing structure. In let's say in aarnâ's case, it's ATV USDC, and then ATV USDC is once on the Pendle pool, the yield-bearing stable is stripped into YTPT and also LP, right? So can you also bring some light on what LP stands for?
Yeah, so for users that are not keen to pick between fixed rates, which is on the PT side of things, or YT, which is variable yield receivables coming from the underlying asset, they can simply provide liquidity or LP on the Pendle market for aarnâ, ATV, USDC. And what that does is that it allows the LP to earn all future swap fees that are generated from people that are trading the PT and YT assets on Pendle. And secondly, also, whenever aarnâ is doing bribing with Equilibrium PenPy to increase the incentives for this LPs will also stand to receive additional Pendle reward emissions. So there's a few yield components here. The first one would be mainly swap fees, and then second would be the yield incentives coming from the Pendle reward emissions on a weekly basis.
Right. Okay. So in the case of your biggest market, which is SUSDE,
Yep.
how many are LP holders? How many are PT holders, or is it predominantly PT?
Yeah, I think we've got a good spread. If I just pull up the number on my screen right now, I think it's about on Pendle itself, we have about 200 million across SUSDE and USDE pool, and that's in the form of LP. And majority of it is being held as PT assets. And I'm looking at the numbers now. We are actually close to 6 billion in PT assets across SUSDE and USDE. So you can see the majority of the TVL is actually just held in PT assets, and a lot of these PT holders, they are not looking to sell in the interim. They are mainly looking to hold and earn the fixed yield until close to maturity, or if not even after maturity. So that's something that a lot of these users are doing. But in terms of LP TVL, there is about 200 million of that on Pendle itself for both SUSD and USDE.
Right. Okay. And so essentially, any yield-bearing stable structure or any structured vault which generates an additional yield on a stable, like in our case. And so let's take in Athena's case, it's SUSD is already a yield-bearing stable coin. In aarnâ's case, it is a structured product which generates a yield on underlying USDC, aggregates yield on that. Now,
Yeah,
goes on Pendle, there's LP, PT, and YT, as we understood. Now, PT is generating the fixed yield, and that
that's correct.
fixed yield, right, is essentially being determined at any point in time by the YT trading, right?
Exactly.
And right, and the YT trading is the activity of the YT trading is higher if there is the perception is that the yield's current value is lower than what the future value would be. If the YT traders believe that there is a higher yield when you look at its current form, then the activity for YT becomes higher. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So
Yeah, I think
YT
you put it in a really good way.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying you put it in a really good way where the PT fixed rate, the misconception here that a lot of people have is that the PT fixed rate is coming, from the underlying asset itself. But actually the truth is that the PT fixed rate discount is, like you said, being provided by the YT buyers, right? Which are taking I would say the other side of the trade. and speculating on future yield receivables. For example, because they expect future underlying yields to increase, or they expect the value of the incentives, whether it's points or direct token emissions, to be worth more than the cost of the YT. In which case, they think probably the implied yield on Pendle is mispriced, and it's cheaper than what it's supposed to be. Then they would buy YT. So whenever you're buying YT, you're also providing or subsidizing the cost of the PT assets, basically providing a discount, which is where the fixed rate really comes from.
Right. Okay. So yes, and depending upon the how the yield for YT is structured for the underlying asset, obviously, the future
Yep.
yield is sort of valued accordingly. Like for example, in âtvUSDC's case, we have a fair launch design for the underlying additional. There's the native USDC yield, and then the on top yield, which is an ASRT or the aarnâ staking rewards token, which is designed in a fair launch architecture where ASRT holders get access to the aarnâ token at last year's seed round valuation. So everybody, all ASRT holders will essentially at TGE have access to the aarnâ token at the same valuation as the seed round investors of aarnâ. So obviously there is an arbitrage there, and that's where the perception of the future yield value comes in. Now,
That's right.
the YT yield in every case is, or rather, let's go to PT. So the YT action is determining the PT fixed yield at any point in time, and that yield is paid out in the Pendle token.
That's so the fixed yield is actually paid out in the form of getting more of the underlying assets. So one way to think about it is that with the YT holders or the YT buyers, they're swapping away their principal, which is âtv USDC here, for the right to receive future yield receivables. So whenever they're swapping the principal away, that goes to the PT guys towards maturity, right? So with PT, you're actually receiving more of the underlying asset, which is why Pendle is quite a dynamic protocol in the sense that it doesn't have to be just stable coins. It could even be ETH denominated assets. It could even be BTC denominated assets. It could even be it could even be hype denominated assets. So the underlying token can be anything, right? As long as there is a mechanism by which users are keen to speculate on both the variable yield portion that includes incentives and points, as well as a fixed rate component on the PT side of things.
Okay, so even PT holders will receive all the their yield will ultimately be in the higher number of PT assets, which then convert back into the parent asset, whatever is the
That's correct.
what, right? Okay,
Yes.
and right, and in this structure, obviously PT and YT at any point in time then add up to say 100, and that's where sort of the balancing happens over a period of time until the maturity of the pool, and when YT goes to zero at that point in time.
That's correct. At that point of maturity, when YT goes to zero, PT will simply be equivalent to the underlying asset value, or the SY asset, which is why this guys, even if nobody is trading PT and YT, once you've bought PT and you're just holding it towards maturity, you will be getting an appreciation in the value of the PT assets, which is where the fixed rate comes from.
Right. Okay. So PTYT are fairly clear, and on the Pendle dashboard, depending upon the profile of the user, they could decide exactly how much they want to, if they want to go all in on PT or have some component of YT or YT trade. You have a lot of active YT traders on Pendle platform who go all in on YT as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's a very free market in a sense that you've got this balance between your YT buyers, which are most of the time more degen. I wouldn't even say that they're more degen, but they're taking higher risks, of course, but with the promise of higher returns, whether that's from underlying yields or whether that's from token incentives like ASRT from aarnâ. If you they have a view that it's underpriced, right? The implied rate that's trading on Pendle, the trade to make would then be to long YT. But with PT, right, the user archetype generally is people who are looking to earn fixed stable yields, right? Not just fixed yields, but denominated in stable coins, for example, which is what ATV USDC is offering here. So you're able to lock in, if I'm looking at Pendle right now, close to 19% APY on ATV USDC. And I think that's one of the highest among the newer pools right now. So it's definitely an attractive opportunity. Um, so yeah, I think that's the beauty of Pendle because it brings in the more institutional users with the more speculative or your average DeFi degen.
Right. And let's come to LP then. So there are, uh, LP has an implied yield, which is also a function of how much of Pendle rewards are being streamed in, right? So can you sort of throw some light on that? And who would be a typical LP holder in that case?
Yeah, I think with LP, it's a middle ground between PT and YT because some users they want to receive underlying token incentives or points from the project. In this case, for example, they're keen to receive ASRT from aarnâ, then the option is probably YT, and the next best option would be LP. What I mean by that is that with YT, it's a bit higher, it's more of a higher risk play because you're simply exchanging your YT value or your initial principal value for the right to receive leverage exposure to the underlying assets yield as well as points. But with LP, you don't have to decide between PT and YT. PT meaning you give out all the points and incentives and the ASRT tokens. But with LP, you're getting both, right? Meaning you're getting a portion of fixed rates, you're getting a portion of underlying yields on the SY portion of the LP, and you're also getting the token incentives from aarnâ, which is ASRT token. So it's basically, I would say, the middle ground, and also the yields for LPs can be very attractive, like we were talking about earlier, because it also is supplemented by Pendle reward emissions on a weekly basis. And if I'm looking at the ASRT, sorry, the ATV USDC pool on Pendle right now, I can see that the yield for LPs is trading at something like 30 to 40%. 40% for boosted yields and 30% for even the non-boosted yields. So I think that's a pretty attractive LP APY.
Right. So unless a user is looking at leveraging, so probably LP is a good deal for them. But if one is looking at future leverage, then PT obviously enables that leverage on platforms like Aave, Euler, and Morpho, right? So
That's right.
and right, and typically, what sort of LTVs do PT assets get on Aave Morpho?
Yeah, I think it varies as well, depending on the asset as well as the curator, if it's on Morpho. But on Aave, if we're looking at PT, SUSD, and USD, generally it's close to 90%.
Wow, 90%. Okay. And what about any USDC assets? It will be similar as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Very, very interesting. And where does the sort of Pendle token come into play in this spectrum?
Yeah, so I think the way that value accrues to Pendle token is whenever people are trading PT and YT, firstly, there is a certain swap fee, and the swap fee goes to firstly the VE Pendle holders. So in fact, 80% of the swap fee goes to the VE Pendle holders, meaning people who have locked up their Pendle tokens and they have voted for the specific pool. In this case, because Pendle operates on a VE tokenomic model, so every week, depending on how the VE Pendle voters are voting for the different pool, the Pendle reward emissions gets distributed proportionately to the different pools. And the other advantage of voting for a pool that is generating good volume and good swap fees is that you're also receiving a portion of that swap fees, which is why I was saying earlier, 80% of all the swap fees from all the pools are actually going to the VE Pendle holders that are voting for that specific pool. And then 20% of it is actually going to the LPs themselves. So they're also receiving, again, I was saying earlier, the swap fees from people trading PT and YT. So that also goes to the LPs. Yeah, so obviously the value accrual here is mainly with VE Pendle. So if you're bullish on the revenue generated by a lot of this trading activity on Pendle, then locking up Pendle tokens for VE Pendle allows you to earn exposure to that.
All right. Okay. I mean, it's very tightly designed product structure along with the Pendle protocol token. So obviously, this is how DeFi works, and if designed in the right way, tokens can build phenomenal value. And yeah, I've been seeing a lot of chat on Twitter or X of late around Pendle's TVL and valuation, and I think that'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, I think obviously we couldn't have done this with a lot of the projects that are on Pendle as well. So definitely would like to give some credit to all the projects that have worked with us on Pendle. And also we continue to grow that ecosystem, right? Working with aarnâ and a lot of these other stablecoin projects as well. Recently, about 1.5 months ago, expanding into the Hyper EVM ecosystem. And within, I was saying earlier, 1.5 months, we are already the second largest DeFi protocol, second largest protocol in terms of TVL, just right behind Kinetic, which is a liquid staking protocol for Hype. So I think a lot of these different factors, right? Having Aave Athena, Pendle, Trifecta, having a lot of these new projects join us on the right, like aarnâ, Falcon, a lot of these newer projects that are very promising, as well as our strategic expansion into chains that I think have the power and ability to attract users and TVL, helped us to achieve what we achieve with the TVL milestones, with crossing 10 billion in TVL. But I think that's something that I think it's not the end game for Pendle. I think our team internally, we're still very much hopeful that, and we believe that 10 billion is only the start. The potential for yield trading beyond just DeFi is very, very large, right? If you're looking at traditional finance markets, interest rate swaps are a $500 billion market, right? Just for interest rates. So like it's a very big market. If you look at the whole fixed rate market, it's more than $1 trillion easily. So yeah, I think the opportunity or the end game would really be to expand the offering to real world assets as well, or traditional financial assets that are coming on chain.
Right. No, yeah. And I must say that it's been phenomenal working with you and the Pendle team and in structuring âtvUSDC, getting it live. I think I and my team have definitely enjoyed working together and the support. So I can really see how you guys have kind of built the whole ecosystem, because Pendle will only also grow as as long as the underlying all the other projects that are deployed on Pendle, they do well. So that's phenomenal. For a new platform like aarnâ, especially building on a new primitive on-chain asset management and a full stack asset management play, yield markets and let me kind of also strip that a little bit. So today, as we know, DeFi is very fragmented. There are yield markets, there are leverage markets, there are structured products, and so all of these are completely fragmented. So it's which by its very design and structure makes it much more complex and inaccessible in many ways. And if that is fixed, then DeFi TVL will not be 200 billion, it'll be $1 trillion. There's no reason why DeFi shouldn't be at least a fourth of the entire crypto market at any point in time. And so that's what really aarnâ is designed to address, making DeFi accessible and structured. And the analogy, if you look at it from a traditional finance perspective, it's really asset management. Structured products like ETFs, mutual funds, hedge funds, more complex quant hedge and all of that sort of stuff, and simple products like indexes and stuff. all of these structured products which give risk managed access, informed access to the underlying assets. Those have really enabled wider adoption at scale, and that's why in traditional finance, asset management is today 36% of the entire asset class, whereas in crypto it's just 3% currently. So on chain, so asset management in crypto will grow from 3 to 10, 20, 30% very fast, and a majority of it will actually happen in a DeFi native architecture. So in asset management and crypto currently is a lot. Even that 3% is largely in a CeFi structure, but that will move on to more DeFi structure, and that's what aarnâ is. So we have multiple structured products. The whole âTV or aarnâ tokenized vault platform is designed to create multiple structured products and provide very simplified access to these complex underlying assets or strategies through these structured products. Yield is a big component of that, and we've got AI quant structured products as well, and really looking forward to âtvUSDC's growth on Pendle, and of course Pendle is a slightly complex DeFi protocol, but we've seen the phenomenal participation that's happening, and when looking forward to having large LPs and even individual deployers coming onto âtvUSDC on Pendle, especially with the early structure we've got with the ASRT aarnâ staking rewards token as well. And happy to see âtvUSDC being one of the highest fixed APY is currently on Pendle. So looking forward to growing on âtvUSDC on Pendle. And also I think I had mentioned the other thing that we've been working on is how do we now take the next step and create a vault which does the whole Pendle loop as well within the vault. So it abstracts it completely. So we have a triple staking vault which is currently live on Sonic, which essentially takes the Pendle loop into the vault. So users don't even have to take âtvUSDC to Pendle. They get LP tokens into the vault directly, and the yield is aggregated and reflected in the NAV. That's the next way we'll be looking at doing, and really take forward. But right now the focus is very much on âtvUSDC on Pendle.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think it's I think what I like about âtvUSDC that's different from the other, I would say, yield bearing stablecoin projects that we have seen is that you've integrated I understand, an AI management system, right, to aggregate all of these yields, and turn it into a nice packaged stablecoin that is easily accessible for the average DeFi user, or anyone in general that is keen to access a lot of this yields, whether it's lending yield on Aave, as I understand it, is one of the yield components, or looping yield, utilizing Pendle PT token. So I think it's very interesting what you have built, and yeah, including the aggregated product that includes Pendle that you're talking about on Sonic. I feel like that would likely be the future moving forward, where we see a lot of this stablecoin projects like aarnâ, or more like you said, they're transitioning to more of an asset management kind of role here, where they're curating different yield strategies, tokenizing different fund structures and bringing them on chain, or in your case, tokenizing on-chain fund strategies which are slightly more complex than the average DeFi user, or and turning it into a very simple and nicely packaged solution.
Right. Thank you, Will. That was fascinating, diving into Pendle and understanding the different components. And really, would love everyone who's listening in. If you have questions, do DM. Just shoot it over X. Follow. You can follow me. Follow Will, and follow aarnâ Says to check out the dev that's going on âtvUSDC. So thank you, Will, and thanks everyone.
Thanks, Sri.
Cheers.